I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I'm going to make another pair of stud earrings for you here. You could also easily make this into a pendant as well, even into a ring or into components for a bracelet. So if you kind of want to follow along, you can kind of link up and I'll show you how to do that if you do want to link in. I did a bracelet, or a video rather, a couple months ago, and I wear the earrings constantly. They're called the Princess Studs. They were done with our 10mm Rivoli. So this time I decided to go big or go home and go with the 14mm Rivoli. And these have a different look to them also, but I'm calling them the Queen Studs since we have the Princess that are a little bit tinier. These are going to be the Queen Stud earrings. For the materials, if you do need any of them, on the left-hand side here, we'll do a little drop-down menu for you that lists all the different materials, and you can link on there if you want to purchase from me at PotomacBeads.com. If you're on a mobile or a device that doesn't allow those little pop-ups, underneath the video, there's always a description on the video. If you press the little down arrows that say show more right next to them, that'll give you links underneath the description to purchase all of these products. You can also print out a list and take it to your local Potomac Bead Company store and check in with them for the 14mm Rivolis there. Again, I am making a pair of earrings, so I'm going to be using two 14mm Rivolis. And I'm using the Potomac Crystal Rivolis. And this one here is the Crystal AB, so you can see it's kind of got that crazy shine to it, that it gets lots of different colors. I'm going to go a little bit more muted and just go with the Crystal Silver backed here. So I have that Crystal Labrador Silver backed, and that's the 14mm Rivoli. And again, you need two of them because we're going to be making a pair. In addition to the two Rivolis, we are using, two types of seed beads, 11s and 15s. For the 11-0 seed bead on the sample piece, I used this galvanized gold color. I'm going to use the same color because I like to do a gold and silver mix on the crystal Rivolis here, that plain crystal color. So it's going to be the 11-0 Rivoli, the 11-0 seed bead there in that galvanized gold. In addition, here in the example piece, I did the jet bronze color of the 15-0. I'm going to be using a silver color, and I've used this color a lot in the videos lately. I've really liked it. It's the Opaque Smoke Gray Luster, so it kind of has a little bit of a shine and a shimmer to it, and it's not bright silver, which is going to dull down a little bit that bright Rivoli, basically. For the back of the earrings, we are using a glue-on post or a stud post. Flat padded post is what we call them. And again, you're going to need two of those. And for this one here in particular, it's a 6mm base. So you can use a 6mm base. You could also use a 4mm base. You could even, with this design in particular, use an 8mm base. So that's kind of up to you. In addition to the beads and the backings, we need a size 10 beading needle, and you're just going to need one. If you would prefer, you can use a 12 also. The 12 actually will be a little bit better of a fit going through some of these seed beads so many times, especially you can see kind of the back of the design there that builds it up. So a 10 or a 12 or an 11, but I actually think I'm going to switch to a 12 for this project. In addition to the size 12 needle, you'll need some thread. I'm going to be using the green wildfire beading thread, what I use mainly. It's 0.006 in diameter in inches, and we are going to be using about 2.5 feet of the green wildfire thread. Always handy, I like to have a pliers. Those pliers are used often. Sometimes you need to yank at your needle, but usually they're used because I like to use the Thread Zap 2. There's also the Thread Zap Ultra. The Thread Zap has a tip on the end that will burn your thread. Once that is burnt and it is kind of cut off the spool with that burn, I take my pliers and I flatten out the end of the wire, and that's going to make it much easier to string the thread through the eye of the needle. If you are a person that likes to glue, you also want to have some glue handy, some super new glue. You don't have to glue your projects, it's kind of up to you, but I like to have the super new glue handy because a lot of you do like to glue. The other thing that I have, I'm working on a nice workable surface, this nice Velux kind of coating here. I usually work on my bead on it boards, and I can kind of move them from area to area, and underneath the screen here for you, work on this nice bright white surface. To get started, we are going to be kind of setting the posts to the side, and I want to make little piles of my 15 and my 11/0 seed bead, have one of my crystal Rivolis ready to go, and thread about 4 feet of beading thread onto a size 12 needle. So to get started, I have my thread on my size 12 needle, and I have my Rivoli sitting by. We're actually not going to need that for a little bit because we're going to build up the back and then kind of go to the front. But what we are going to start out with is our baseline. Our baseline here is our 11/0 seed beads. We're going to put those around the Rivoli almost in a squared shape. To get that square shape, I'm going to have 7 beads on each side of the square. Initially, when we string them on, they're going to be in a circle. So 7 plus 7 is going to give you 14, and then you want 28 to finish off your sides. I'm simply going to hold the end of my thread here. So I've got the end of my thread, leaving about a 2.5 inch tail. And I'm going to count my seed beads as I pick them up. Again, these are 11/0s. So I have 14 on here. Let those drop down a little bit. And then I'm going to pick up 14 more. Once you have your 28 beads on the string, what we're going to do is tie a knot. And you want to recount, make sure you have 28 on there, because it's going to be important to have an even count. You can see I have just about a 2 inch tail that I'm leaving at the end. I'm just going to tie 2 knots. I want this to stay in its circle, but I don't want to overdo the knots because my needle is going to need to go around those knots. Once I have my circle and my knots on, then it's going to be time to actually build onto my sides, onto the back here, downscaling my 15/0s. We're basically going to start going around in a circle and adding in our little squares that are going to decrease in size. And what that's going to do then is get it tighter and tighter. We'll slip the post in, that pad post in, and close it on up. Then we'll flip over and actually start to design and start the actual front of the project. Once you've got your count on there and you have your 28 beads on and sewed into a rounded stitch, we are going to sew back through the first 7 of the beads that you added. There's 4 and 3 more. That first 7 is going to be our first side of our square base for our Rivoli. Like I said, you could easily do this as a ring and bring the back just completely closed and glue it onto a pad post like this, a ring post. You could also connect it once you have that done along the corners or the sides and make it into a bracelet. So don't limit it to just these earrings. I always love to see what you guys do further and beyond what I teach here on the videos. So I'm through those 7 beads, and what I'm going to do now is add some 15/0s right along this 7. The 15/0s, we're going to decrease the number as we go down along the project. To start out, you're going to pick up 8 of your 15/0 seed beads. 5, 6, 7, and 8. So once you've got 8 on your thread, we're going to go back to the start of those 7 beads that we went through. And here you have a nice little indicator where the start is because it has a knot there. You're going to sew back through those 7 beads, starting on the knot side, sewing out towards where the thread is already exposed. That's going to have those 7 beads sit right along that inner edge of those 7 11s. Next, I'm going to take my needle and thread, sew through my next set of 7. I'll just count my 11s here and make sure I'm through 7. Once I'm through 7 of the 11s, I'm going to go ahead and repeat, picking up 8 15s. So you can see that there's a pattern that's starting. And once we have those 8 15s, we sew back through those 7 beads that we just came out of. It's actually almost part of square stitch or ladder stitch also. Skip over to the next 7 and we repeat through 7 beads. I just always like to count and make sure that I'm through 7. After this, it's not as hard to count. I'm going to put 8 15s on and continue around my row. Okay. 8 are on, back through those 7. Now you can see those 7 beads there are wanting to kind of turn towards the back. Sew through the last set of 7 seed beads. That'll bring you out right near that knot, the beginner thread. I got a little thread happy and did more than 4 feet. That's okay. And got 8 on. Sew back through those last 7. Once I have all of my grouping of 15 O's on, I'm going to force them all kind of to one side. That side is going to sit towards the back of the project. To progress, take your needle and thread through that line of 15 O's that you just put on. So the last line of 15 O's that you put on. From there, go through the next line of 15 O's. So I'm bringing it around the square, just now picking up the 15 O's and sewing the whole way through the 15s, making a nice square set of 15s. Once you're back to the knot here, you want to still sew through those 15 O's that your thread was coming out of to start. And what that's going to do is close up that little square that you just created. Now you have your first little base for the back to sit in. Eventually then we'll turn it over and we'll work on the Rivoli, and the Rivoli will sit nicely right on top of those 11 O's. For now, we're going to continue with the back. To continue with the back, we're going to downgrade. So we used 8 here of the 15 O's. We're now going to downgrade to 6. So we're doing the same thing. We're coming out of our 8 15s, and now we're going to put on 6. So I put on 6, so back through those 8 that my thread's coming out of, and that's going to let those 6 lay right on top. Again, so through the next 8 15s, and add 6. And the reason I like doing the back like this and kind of closing it in is because a lot of times when you glue onto the posts, even if you're using E6000 glue, which would be my recommendation, it can come apart because you're constantly pulling at the earring when you take it on and off. So I actually prefer to do this and sew the actual back into the project rather than gluing it on. So I'm making my way around, adding my 6 15s, going the whole way around. I have one more grouping to add. And then after this group of 6, we get to do a group of 4. Going back through those first 15s. Get that tail kind of out of the way. And once you have all of your groupings of 6 on, you're going to go back through the grouping of 6 that you just added, which is actually going to change the direction that the thread's going. And now we get to make our square smaller. So I'm going to sew through that whole collection of 6 beads. So every time you add 6 is what you're catching on to. And again, that's going to pull it in further as you go around the circle. Again, when you get back to the beginning, see how that opening is kind of still open? Make sure you go back through those original 6 to close it off. Pull nice and tight there, you can see, and that gives you more of your square completed. Now you can see it's a little bit of a basket shape almost, that it has a little bit of a curve to it. That is because your Rivoli is pointed in the back. That point needs somewhere to sit. So that's why we have not downgraded faster, because we do need a little area for this to sit in. Now we're going to go in and we're going to proceed with more seed beads and continue on getting our little squared backing. So after our count here of 6, you can see I've decreased now to 3. So my count as I proceed around goes down to 3. I don't need to leave enough space now for the Rivoli, because that space has already been kind of figured out and granted in there. So that's why we're doing 3, is that because we wanted to lay flat inside that grouping of 6. So we went from 8 to 6, and now we're going down to 3. Once you have your groupings of 3 done, it's time to kind of pull them together. Again, just like we did previously with the last 2 rows, we are going to sew through all of our groupings of 3 around in a circle. You can see the square there is getting smaller. Remember, when you get back to the first square there, or the first side of the square, you want to make sure to still sew through those first 3 seed beads in the row. Get that tail out of the way. And now that's going to get us basically to our flat surface. The flat pad post then is going to sit inside. You can see that it still has kind of some room to wiggle around. What I like to do now is to really kind of get it trapped in there or trapped in place. To do so, I'm coming out of my first side of 3, and I'm going to add on 1 bead. So back through those 3, just like if I were continuing to add 1 to all my rows. I'm going to sew through then the second of my 4 sides, sewing through that group of 3. And then rather than putting on a bead, sew through the third grouping of 3. Here I will add a bead, and then sew back through that grouping of 3. I'm going to sew back through that first, or that single bead that I added, and then go ahead and sew directly over to the single bead on the other side. Go in and sew back through, taking your string the whole way around. And before you pull tight, you can see that kind of circle existing there. You're going to drop your pad post in and make sure that the center of that pad post is through that center loop of thread. So mine doesn't want to cooperate to go through there. There we go. Give a nice tight pull, and that pad post is going to sit right in the middle there. Because there is a fair amount of tension, and I just went over with this with the whole gluing the back of the pad post and all of that, I'm going to go back through those 2 seed beads locking that thread in place about 3 times. So I'm basically sewing around the post. And if your post happens to come loose, don't worry, you can actually take the pad post and put it back up in there. Now I have my pad post ready to go and my earring ready to go. That pad post should just kind of sit in the bottom there. I've created a little bit of a cave in there for my Rivoli to sit nice and flat. And now we get to actually do the outside of the Rivoli. So we're going to flip to the front and do the front side. This technique will work for a bunch of different sizes. It's almost a basket weave technique that you're doing and kind of creating that arched and that degressing of the seed bead count. To get to the front of the design, or to get to one of my rows of 7 beads, which I need to go into, I'm going to take my thread and needle and sew back along one of the basically triangles, because we basically created 4 triangles right along our square. I'm just taking my thread and my needle back through all the seed beads in the previous row. So I went back through the 1 seed bead. Now I'm going back through, then I went back through the 3 seed beads. Now I'm going back through the row of 6. I'll go through the row of 8. And then I'm going to get my thread and needle to come out right along my base row of my 11 O's. Bringing my baseline, or my base thread there, through a grouping of 7 11 O's, I'm going to get ready to do, excuse me, my netting along the top of the Rivoli. So again, I'm not even really worried about the Rivoli yet. I'm just doing the netting. The netting we're going to do much in the same fashion as we did adding the seed beads and kind of degressing along the back, except this time we're going to be adding the seed beads, and then instead of going back through them again, we're going to go through just 1 bead that we caught on. To start our pattern, we're going to be using our 15 O's in a collection of 5, then 1 11 O, and then 5 more 15s. Taking my needle and thread now, going back through those original 7 seed beads that my thread came out of. That's going to create that little kind of arch that sits off to the side. You can see I put my finger in the earring. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Going to the next side, I'm going to sew through my 7 seed beads along the side. Once I'm through 7, my needle is going to come out, and then I go back into that pattern of the 5 seed beads, 1 11, then 5 more 15s. So back through that line of 7 again, and you get the idea because it's the same thing that you've been doing, is that you're going to continue on, shooting over to the next group of 7, and adding in the 15s and the 11s. After you get that second side in there, in that second grouping, scooch on over, right along the 11s, and pick up your next line of 7. Once you're through 7, add your pattern of that 5 1 5. If you want to and you don't want to see any thread whatsoever, you can do 6 1 6. I prefer to pull the Rivoli tight, so I like the 5 1 5 count. I'm going to proceed then to do my last side here, and then I'll show you how we progress and kind of get our Rivoli into place. So at this point, we're actually done our 11 O's once you get those kind of 4 corners of your 11 O's in place. And what I'm going to do is bring my thread and needle as I'm coming out my last grouping of 11, having added my 15s and my 11. I'm going to sew through the 5 15s as well as the 1 middle 11. What that's going to do is kind of create a point with those sides, and I'm going to pick up 5 more 15s. So again, we're done with the 11s. 5 more 15s get added on, and then we're doing a netting, so we're going to grab the middle of the previous row of 11s. You can see that kind of creates that little corner there. Again, repeat, grabbing 5 15s and over to the next 11. You can see my finger's still in there. At this point, after doing 2 sides of it, I'm going to take my Rivoli and kind of wiggle it in there. And I'm not going to worry about pulling too tight until I go around to my last 2 groupings of 5. Because as I do that, I'm actually naturally going to kind of push that Rivoli down a little bit further. Pick up 5 more 15s and through the 11. And I was saying that I had done the Princess Studs earlier. I don't know what I was thinking. I actually did them with the chatons, so even the smaller Rivolis. Those pointed back chatons. But you really can do this pattern, like I said, with any bead. Or with any Rivoli, you're just going to need to figure out your count a little bit. Once your last grouping of 5 is on, you're going to go sew through that first 11 seed bead. Kind of push all those beads towards the top, and then you give a nice little yank. When you give that nice little yank, the crystal Rivoli gets locked into place. It's kind of like magic. Now to tighten it up, and you can still see a little bit of thread, kind of push it around with my fingers. Here's where the magic happens. You're going to retrace your thread line and go back through all of those beads that you just added. Anytime you have something bezeled or set, the last row or the row closest to the middle of the stone, you always want to reinforce. So this is basically reinforcing, and tightening that inner area. I think these are going to be my new favorite earrings to wear. I wear the princess ones all the time. I have little ones, so I prefer studs because then they don't grab at them. I have gone around now 1 complete time. You can see my thread, my needle wants to trace back through those 15 O's along the side because it knows where I'm going. All right. So I have that pulled nice and tight, and you can see that kind of basket weave sits in there almost perfectly. I kind of go along and push the 15 O's towards the top of the project along the sides. That's where I was saying you can add a 6th 15 O in to that count if you want to. I don't worry about it. There I have it ready to go, and that queen earring set in there. To tie off my thread and to end the project, I'm going to end the thread so that my thread is coming out, my 2 thread ends are coming out right at that corner. To do so, take your thread and needle, back through some of the 15s along the side here. So kind of down through the side of that little V, and then back through that grouping of 7. Once your threads end in the same place, I just need to go through 1 more bead there. You can kind of pull them towards the back. Pull them towards the back and tie off the knot right along the back. So once the 2 threads are ending, simply take your threads and tie the 2 ends together. once you have those thread ends tied, you can grab your burner and hold the thread ends, pulling them away from your project, burn the thread ends down, and then burn them kind of flush towards the project, making sure that you're not burning through the knot that you tied. Because they're towards the back of the project, you don't see them at all, and you are finished with your first little one of your queen studs. So you have the queen studs, you just need to repeat and do the second one. You can do blingy and go with a bunch of the different colors. You can see like the darker seed beads versus the lighter seed beads, what brings out the crystal versus what you kind of see the seed beads more of. You can really change the look and the design. Again, what I was thinking is if you want to do a bracelet, it would look fabulous. Still doing the exact same thing. If you want, you can stop when you get to your grouping of 5 and just let the Rivoli stick out a little bit at the base. And then after you're done all of these, actually join them together along the corners. That would make a beautiful bracelet. So I challenge somebody to do that and make it so that we can see it and post it on this video. You can post it in the comments or even on our Facebook page or link onto it there. It would be a beautiful design to kind of have that going. So once you have the one done, you just need to go back and repeat to do your second earrings. You should have enough thread on your needle. I have plenty because again, I got a little thread happy to do your second earring as well. So you'll grab your next Rivoli, grab your backing, and go ahead and pour out some more seed beads and get to working and get to town. Again, if you need any of these materials to do these queen stud earrings, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down that has the link to all of the different materials that we use, or underneath the video to the description box. And the description box, do that show more button, and that will get you links to all of the different materials. That way you can purchase them from me online, or you can shop at your local Potomac Bead Company as well for just that 14mm Rivoli and the 11s and the 15s. So it doesn't use a lot of materials, which is great too. And they are really quick to make once you get going, and you don't have to kind of stop for the video and create and go and create and go. You get your countdowns right and you're good to go. If you do want to see a little bit more seed beads on the side, you're just going to make your center count there a little bit bigger if you don't want to see the sides of the crystals. So just play around kind of with the numbers if you have different size Rivolis and you want to use those to create. Again, as always, thank you so much for watching, everybody. And if you do want to stay connected with us, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also share this YouTube channel with a friend, get regular updates from us, what's going on in the beading world, what new products are out there, what we're bringing to you, and all of that good stuff as well. You can also stay connected with me at PotomacBeads.com, as well as on our Facebook and our Twitter and our Instagram and all of that fun marketing things. Also, join and become a member of our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's a great interactive forum for people that love to make jewelry in all different ways, all different mediums, and it's just a great community of artists that are helpful to one another, offer guidance, and like to show off their designs and give ideas as well. Thank you everyone so much for watching and continuing to watch me create and design. Again, make it yours, take it and make something beautiful out of it. Take these as components and continue on designing as well. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and have fun creating.